اللهم صل على محمد.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا من سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. After praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending immense greetings and salutations upon the final Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who has been sent upon amongst mankind وَيُزَكِّيهِمْ, to purify mankind from those traits and characteristics that many of us, unfortunately, we carry inside our lives. That many of us individuals, that we begin to think that Islam is just a display of Islam, that a certain dress sense or a certain etiquette shows that you are a good believer, a good Muslim. Not to say that these things are not important for a Muslim to display their identity as a Muslim and to carry certain traits and characteristics. But some of us, we only home in on these formats and we begin to judge people upon this depiction of Islam. And we fail to understand the inner teachings of Islam of rectifying oneself within our hearts. Because many of what's classified as amradul qulub, the sicknesses of the heart, exist even more powerfully today that we don't begin to focus upon them inside our lives. Allah mentions in the Quran, يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. On that day your wealth and your children will not avail you except for a person who comes with a pure, with a sound heart, with a heart which is rectified. That's even many of the ma'asi, the dhunub, وَحَتَّى الْكَبَائِرِ, the major sins that we see inside our society, they spill over, they come from these vices or this feeling inside our heart. Many of us, we think that the first awwal jarima al ard, the first sin on the earth was al-qatl, was killing. Or prior to that, we find the first sin inside the heavens was al-kibr, was arrogance. The first sin on the earth wasn't killing. What took place before the killing is classified as the first sin. Awwal jarima al-ard huwa al-hasad. The first sickness on the earth, or the first major sin on the earth, which led to these other atrocities, was jealousy. Jealousy that was inside the heart of one individual led to one individual to kill another individual. The killing of one individual to another individual wasn't just a normal human being. These were the sons of Adam alayhi salam. وَاتْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ ابْنَيْ آدَمَ بِالْحَقِّ. Narrate to them the story of the two sons of Adam alayhi salam, as we find inside Surah Al-Ma'idah. The two sons being, as some of the ulama go to review, being Habil and Qabil. Abel and Cain inside the English language has been mentioned. Whether the truth, some ulama debate whether that's their name or not, but we take it on face value that these are the two sons, Habil and Qabil. That the first sin that existed amongst these two individuals was the concept of jealousy. Because that time you find, as Ibn Kathir mentions inside his tafsir, and likewise inside his works, speaking about Qasasul Anbiya in more detail about what took place at the beginning. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed that a brother and a sister will be born together. And in the next batch of children will be another brother and sister. And the first batch of brother and sister will marry the opposite brother and sister, with something which is specifically allowed at that time. Then it became abolished. So Habil and Qabil, these were two brothers that we find, opposite brothers, who had to marry opposite sisters. So the sister of Habil was beautiful, and the sister of Qabil, she was ugly. So they had to marry the opposite. So Qabil, firstly straight away he felt offensive that he has to marry a woman who's not so beautiful. And so this slightly enraged him. Then as they began to dispute, Adam alayhi salam judges amongst them, and the Sharia at that time was to present some form of sacrifice. And a fire would come and burn that sacrifice. And if that sacrifice was burnt, that was accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Habil, the produce that he brings, is a produce of cattle, of a sheep. Qabil just brings some crops and presents them. Here, ulama begin to mention that a person, when they offer something, should offer the best thing that they can offer. And Allah mentioned, إِنَّمَا يَتَقَبَّلُ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. Allah is going to accept it from the pious individuals. So Allah accepted the sacrifice of Habil. This enraged Qabil even more. He now decided that he's now going to do what? He's going to now to stretch out his hand and he's going to kill his own brother. His own blood brother, he's going to kill him. Because of that feeling of jealousy, of envy, that rage within himself, that he begins to carry out this evil action. And that's a discussion that begins to take place inside Surah Al-Ma'idah, what begins to take place. And this isn't the first time that we find this jealousy exists. Look at the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. The prime theme is one of jealousy. That the brethren of Yusuf, who later many ulama go to the view, also became prophets. That what did they say? Get rid of Yusuf, because we find that our father Yaqub is showing more love and affection towards Yusuf. Get rid of him or kill him. So then we can have directly the face of our father, directly we can visualize the face of our father, have that total love to be given to us. And then what did they say? وَتَكُونُ مِن بَعْدِهِ قَوْمًا صَالِحِينَ. Then after we do this evil action, we're going to become righteous people. Another logic inside the Quran, loghatan, that we find. Many of us Muslims, this is what we think inside our lives. Because most of us, we know what's halal, what's haram. I'm going to do this action. وَتَكُونُ مِن بَعْدِهِ قَوْمًا صَالِحِينَ. I'm going to do this action inside my life, and then later on I'll become righteous. Later on I'll repent inside my life. So here you find that the jealousy of the brethren of Yusuf, it led them to carry out this evil action. Likewise, the jealousy that the Quraysh and the Yahud at the time they had towards the Prophet ﷺ. It was jealousy that enraged them. That why has he come from the lineage of Ismail? Why has he not come from the lineage of Ishaq? Why has he come from the lineage of Ismail, who happens to be the father of the Arabs, as they say? The lineage should have been from us, and this jealousy led them to carry out this hatred that they began to show towards the Prophet ﷺ. So this concept that we find of jealousy that we find amongst in the beginning, قَالَ لَأَقْتُلَنَّكَ. So this enraged Qabil. He said, I'm going to now kill you. But we find that the other brother began to control himself and saying that if you stretch out your hand to kill me, I'm not going to kill you. I'm not going to do the action in response to you. إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهَ رَبَّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Indeed, I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why ulama tafasir, they mentioned that Habil was a stronger individual. He was the stronger individual because he's able to control himself. The strong one isn't the one who begins to wrestle and to fight with people. The strong individual is the one الَّذِي يَمْلِكْ نَفْسَهُ عِنْدَ الْغَضَبِ. The strong one is the one who's able to retain himself in a state of anger. That's what a strong individual is. It's not the one who wrestles and argues with people or makes a point to people. The Prophet, as I mentioned, a person, if someone's arguing with you and you walk away from that debate, that argument, that person has a house in paradise. وَكَانَ الْإِنسَانُ أَكْثَرُ شَيْئًا جَدَلًا. But man likes to argue, likes to prove his point, likes to prove that I'm right, likes to have superiority, likes to make another human being feel looked down upon them. Even if we're going to touch upon the religious world, to make other people look down upon other individuals, in the rhetoric, in the speech that we have towards other individuals inside society. So he said, I'm not going to return back or retaliate against you. I fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what we mentioned. We began with the sifat inside the Quran. We focus upon certain tertiary things. When Allah speaks about the believing individuals who carry out righteous and good actions inside their lives, what does Allah mention? These are traits that we begin to fail or we begin to skip over them. Allah mentions وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. وَالْكَاظِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ carries the meaning of literally they swallow their anger. These are traits of believing. It's not just that you follow upon the believers of those individuals. الَّذِي يُنْفِقُونَ فِي السَّرَّاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ. Those who spend their wealth in times of good times or hardships, do these righteous actions. We don't complete the verses. We don't look at the complete understanding of the verses. We pick and you choose what suits us. Because these things are mur. These things are hard to do. To swallow your anger. for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then on top of that, Allah mentions, وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ. Then when someone oppresses you, harms you, does something to you, وَالْعَافِينَ عَنِ النَّاسِ, you pardon people. You overlook it. وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ, Allah loves the doers of good. But we don't home in on those traits and characteristics, because as we began with, these external characteristics are easy. Anyone can wear a thobe. Anyone can wear a hat. Anyone can grow their beard. Everyone can display themselves as a Muslim. But it takes a lifetime of tuning your heart and your mind that your ghadab, your anger, your fear, your happiness, your farh, everything is tuned to be like who? The sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Not the sunnah when it suits you. That's why we find that people become reckless. Many times as imams have to deal with disputes amongst people. Then it all goes out the window. Then it goes out the window to remind people about the sunnah, about the teachings of the Prophet. I've been oppressed, I've been wronged, it's my right, I can do this, I can do that. Where are the verses then of the Quran? فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ حَتَّى يُحَكِّمُوكَ فِي مَا شَجَرَ بَيْنَهُمْ ثُمَّ لَا يَجِدُ فِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَرَجًا مِمَّا قَضَيْتَ وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. These are the words that we just narrate to people in our society. The actual implementation, we're far from it. Because we're tuned inside the society that when it's my right, I need to seek my right to the best of my ability. Marriage, issues of marriage and divorce and children, ask that imma. It all goes out the window then. No, that's my right. I can do what I want to do. It's my wealth, it's my property. He owes me this. He oppressed me. I can do that. I can retaliate. So such a degree of intervene where people have even attempted and said they would categorically kill another person. They threaten another person and say, that's my right. Over what? And some of the things have been so shallow. But this is what shaitan does, enrages people, creates that mindset. That's why the strong personality is the one who's able to control their anger. And as we find that when the Muslims, the fighting that we find that takes place, the bickering that we find inside our Muslim society, what does it lead to? Even among Sunnis, what do you find? You find there's been many occasions where Muslims have fought one another inside society. The Prophet has mentioned that when you find that if two Muslims, if they unsheathe their swords to one another, فَالْقَاتِلُ وَالْمَقْتُولُ فِي النَّارِ, the killer and the killed are both in the hellfire. The companions said, we understand the qatil. We understand, the maqtul. We understand the killed one. We understand why he goes to the killer, why he goes to the hellfire. Because he was trying to kill this person. فَمَا بَالُ الْمَقْتُولُ, what about the killed one? How does a killed one go to the hellfire? What does the hadith mention? كَانَ حَرِيصًا عَلَى قَتْلِ أَخِيهِ. He goes to the hellfire because he had the same intention. He had the same intention inside his heart that if he slips, he drops his sword, I have the opportunity, I will kill him likewise. So that's why both of them will go to the hellfire. The one who's a killer and the killed individual. That's why the Prophet I mentioned that we come into some form of this type of argumentation. Kun kabni Adam, be like the son of Adam who did not retaliate, who controlled himself, who gained that greater reward in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inni akhafu Allah Rabbal Alameen. Indeed, the only thing that you want to do is to get my sin and your sin and to be amongst the companions of hellfire. وَذَلِكَ جَزَاءُ الظَّالِمِينَ. And that is the recompense and reward of those individuals, oppressive individuals. So all that his task was just to advise. To advise his brother. That's all our task in society is, just to advise the people around us. فَطَوَّتْ لَهُ نَفْسُهُ قَتْلَ أَخِيهِ فَقَتَلَهُ فَأَصْبَحَ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. But his emotions played upon him. So he decided to kill his brother. And that's what ulama tafsir they mentioned. There could be some authenticity question, but they give this depiction. Whether you find that shaitan came and he strangled an animal, or he placed an animal on the ground and he stoned its head. Whatever the truth may be, but it gives this depiction that Qabil didn't know how to kill his brother. But he was enraged and inspired, and for some sign was shown to him, this is what you need to do, how you need to kill your own brother. And that's what shaitan does. That's what shaitan just comes. الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي صُدُورِ النَّاسِ. How many of us, we feel remorseful of the actions that we've done inside our lives? That if I never follow the intuition, the whispering of shaitan. That's what ulama speak about inside Surah Ibrahim, was known as the Khutbah of Iblis. The sermon of Iblis that he's going to give. He's going to say, فَلَا تَلُمُونِي وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Don't blame me. blame your own selves. All that I did, I just whispered to you, I called, and then you responded to me. Is a sermon he's going to give on the Day of Judgment. I have no power or authority over you. فَأَصْبَحَ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. So Qabil became amongst one of the losing individuals. And here ulama mentioned the repercussions of killing people unjustly and all these unjust wars in the world. There's a complete illness at the moment of where you find that troops and soldiers who've killed innocent people, they're having nightmares about it. Because it's the human nature. No one likes to kill people. No one likes to harm another individual. It's human nature. So when you kill somebody unjustly, it will haunt you for the rest of your life. That's why when they come back from this service, because of the innocent killings that they've done across the Muslim world and everywhere inside the world, it haunts them. The atrocities that they committed inside their lives. Then this individual doesn't know what to do. So Allah narrates, فَبَعَثَ اللَّهُ غُرَابًا يَبْحَثُ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Allah sent a ghurab, a crow. And this crow that came, he killed another crow. And after killing the crow, you find that he dug a hole in the ground, and then he pushed the other crow into the ground and he covered it up. This is where Qabil learned, this is what I need to do with a dead jifa, with a dead corpse of my brother. He didn't even know how to bury him. He didn't know what to do with him. Allah had to send the crow to show him the depiction, this imagery to show him, this is what you need to do. Now what did he feel? فَأَصْبَحَ مِنَ النَّادِمِينَ. First he's a losing individual, now he's in total loss. That what have I done inside my life? I've killed my brother, now I don't even know how to bury him. And this is the way I have to learn to carry out burying my own brother. That's when the hadith Muslim Imam Ahmad that we find, that because of this initial sin, you find that this one son of Adam will carry a share of that blame. Because he's the first person to carry out killing upon this earth. Like when you find the hadith, Man sanna fil islami sunnatan hasanatan. Whoever does a good deed, and whoever follows it, you'll have that reward. Whoever does a bad deed and people begin to follow you. That's why many times we say that as Muslims, that all of us will sin and we err. Keep your sins to your own self. Keep them to your own self. Don't become a person who spreads sins inside society. That Muslims who've become drug dealers inside our society, that they're harming other people or oppressing other people that you find. This is a sin that is multiplying many times over. That your sin is multiplying many times over, introducing other people. And likewise we find in the Muslim world. What does Allah say inside the Quran? إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُحِبُّونَ أَن تَشِيعَ الْفَاحِشَةُ فِي الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ فِي الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. Once again we hide in some smoke screen. Oh, this doesn't happen in the Muslim world. This doesn't happen. There's no alcohol being served in the Muslim world. Muslims don't drink in the Muslim world. There's no muharramat in the Muslim world, in the Muslim society. Just recently, I don't want to name a country, but they voted in their parliament about alcohol, to decrease the price of alcohol, to serve alcohol. A parliamentary seating of something like maybe 120 odd people, 90 of them voted to say, yes, we should do it. Then you find 9 or so said no, and 3 abstained. This is a Muslim country. Then after agreeing that this is what we're going to do inside our country, they said, let us take a break for 15 minutes and pray Salatul Maghrib. You know when people say, oh, people inside the Muslim world, they're not so bad. They don't say they're disbelievers. Read what ulama have mentioned about istihlal. Making things muharramat halal. That is making it halal. You don't need to bluntly say that khamr is halal. You need a license to serve alcohol in a Muslim country. So when a government gives a license, you've made it halal. You don't need a person to say the words that I believe khamr is halal. You're issuing a license. That license is given by an authority. So ulama spoke about istihlal al-muharramat, to make something which is haram halal, min al-kufr. It's from the haram things. It's disbelief. You don't need to go into technical renditions about people. And we're not judging any people because we're not naming the country, the state, or whatever it may be. We're just helping us to understand when we speak about belief and aqa'id and belief, we need to understand them deeply what they are. Not have a tertiary reading and a shallow reading. This is what belief is. What is real belief in Islam? That is crystal clear lines. That even if you don't do haram, but you begin to encourage haram inside society, you're on a dangerous wavelength. To give us another example, a person, ما يزني في حياته, doesn't commit zina inside his life. Doesn't commit zina. But says, ما بال الناس. فما هو الحرج? What's wrong with people if they want to have a girlfriend, boyfriend relationship, they want to carry out relationships? It's a free country, free world. Let them do what they want to do. Once again, listen carefully, this person never does it in their life. Says, what's wrong with it? وشخص آخر, another person, he carries out this action because of his weakness, الشهوات, desires, love of women, whatever it may be. You ask him, يعترف بذنبه, he acknowledges, أني عاصٍ, I'm a person who's disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I know it's wrong inside my life. This second person is a believing person, but he's full of sins. The first person never does it inside their life, is on the edge of becoming a disbeliever, or could be classified as a disbeliever. فَمَا زَنَى فِي حَيَاتِهِ, and never committed zina inside his life. That's what we need to understand the text of the Sharia, that when these certain words and certain actions, what they lead to, what it leads to inside society, what happens inside our society, we can see the brunt of it inside our society, what begins to take place. So that's why you're carrying out an action of evil action. And encouraging people leads to more sins inside society. Then Allah mentioned, مِنْ أَجْلِ ذَلِكَ كَتَبْنَا عَلَى بَنِي إِسْرَائِيل. And because that we wrote that upon Bani Israel, whoever kills one person without any justification, فَكَأَنَّمَا قَتَلَ النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا, it's as if they killed the whole of mankind. Whoever saves one individual is as if they saved the whole of mankind. We don't need PhD dissertations and people coming and printing leaflets and saying terrorism is this, that, and the other. It's inside the Quran. There's no Muslim who believes that the killing of an innocent people is allowed. There's no Muslim who believes that. A Muslim does believe that. That's what we call pure deviancy. And it's a minute fringe movement inside the Muslim world. It's a 0.01%. But to inflate the affair that anybody who speaks about Islam, who speaks about jihad, who speaks about revival, he has these tendencies. The Quran is quite clear to harm any individual. To kill one person without any justification is as if you kill the whole of mankind. And to save one person as if you save the whole of mankind. Islam here isn't to dismantle and to destroy. Islam is to build, to encourage, to lead people towards that. As we began with, يُخْرِجُ مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ, to take us out from the realms of darknesses to the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we find that these cardinal sins of envy and jealousy that we find even inside the society, read what they classify as the 7 deadly sins. Amongst these 7 deadly sins, these cardinal sins is what? Amongst lust and greed and gluttony that we find is envy. The Latin word invidia. To be full of rage and hatred for what another person has been gifted or given with. That you don't want that person to have that blessing. Ziwalu ni'mah, you want that person to lose that blessing. That why has that person been given that blessing? Once again, this goes back to what? You're questioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're asking that why has Allah given this person a position? Why has Allah given this person wealth? Why has Allah given this person property? Why has Allah given this person rank? That's what you're trying to say by default. That you're not content, you're not happy. And so what happens is that feeling inside your heart that you begin to lead towards this perversion towards people that we find. The forms of jealousy that the Quran mentioned, the first form that we mentioned, is the ultimate jealousy towards the Prophet ﷺ. يَعْرِفُونَهُ كَمَا يَعْرِفُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُم. They know him like they know their own sons. It was the jealousy that led them to try to expel the Prophet, to try to kill him, to try to slay him, as we began with. Likewise, the Quran it mentioned, يعني وَدَّ كَثِيرٌ مِنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ. Most of Ahlul Kitab, what do they want? They want you to divert you. لَوْ يَرُدُّونَكُم مِّن بَعْدِ إِيمَانِكُمْ كُفَّارًا حَسَدًا مِّنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِهِمْ. They want you to take you away from Iman because of the jealousy they have inside their hearts. A jealousy they have inside their hearts. Allah mentioned that their jealousy inside their hearts, what do they want to do? Or what can be extracted from the verse? They want to blow out the light of Allah, the light of Islam. But indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will complete that light. Likewise, Allah mentioned, يَكَادُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَيُزْلِقُونَكَ بِأَبْصَارِهِمْ لَمَّا سَمِعُوا الذِّكْرَ وَيَقُولُونَ إِنَّهُ لَمَجْنُونَ. They want you to slip up with their eyes, which is a form of jealousy that we find, that the way that they look at towards a Muslim, they look towards the Prophet, they want them to slip, to make a mistake, because of the jealousy they have inside their hearts that we find. And Allah mentions, قُلْ مُوتُوا بِغَيْظِكُمْ. Die in your rage, in your anger. in your jealousy that you may have. That's why you find that as Muslims that we should know this inside our lives, that there'll always be this jealousy towards the Prophet ﷺ, but we need to know how to challenge that jealousy, or how to channel that jealousy towards the Prophet ﷺ. وَقُولُوا قَوْلِ هَذَا وَاسْتَغْفِرُ لَي وَلَكُمْ وَلِجَمِيعِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ فَاسْتَغْفِرُوا إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. الحمد لله رب العالمين وأصلي وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. As for some of the jealousies that need to be addressed or mentioned amongst our own selves, as we began with that, we need to refine our own characteristics and our own behavior and try to remove these evil traits and characteristics within ourselves or within our hearts. And unfortunately, as we mentioned that many times, that these traits or characteristics, they will spill out. That's why ulama of tazkiyah, like Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, is classified as Tabibul Qalb, the doctor of the heart. They speak about this jealousy, this rage, or these bad traits that a person has inside their heart. They begin to spill out. Especially if we don't begin to try to tune ourselves, we mentioned that we make this dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahumma ati nafsi taqwaha wa zakki wa anta khayru man zakkaha. That we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to purify our soul, purify the inner elements of ourself. And the best one is who purifies, or the only one that purifies is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's inside Surah Al-Shams. This surah Allah mentions some 11 or 12 consecutive oaths, the longest place inside the Quran, of continuous oath after oath, by the morning, the day, by the night, by the heavens and the earth, till eventually Allah mentions قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. Successful is the one that purifies it, and wretched is the one that doesn't pay attention to it. What is it speaking about? It's speaking about the soul, about the nafs, about the heart. That's a successful individual who tries to polish that inside their heart, to take away these bad feelings within himself. So another jealousy that we find inside our community that people don't want to speak about is religious jealousy. Some of us may think, oh, that doesn't sound right. Read the works of Imam Khatib al-Baghdadi. Speak about contemporary ulama living in that time who had jealousy towards one another. Let us be crystal clear. It's not showing any disrespect to any of the scholars. But what should we understand? أن العلماء هم البشر. Scholars are human beings. They are human beings. They're not infallible. So their mind and their words can also be derailed towards a certain thing, just like any other human being. If not, that means that you're trying to take them as some form of allegiance, that they can never ever make a mistake. They can never ever make a mistake, or they can never ever say anything out of context. Once again, disclaimer, we're not questioning the rank or the prestige of the ulama, but this is what ulama have discussed, that there's jealousy that begins to take place. And even the modern world that we find, the many of the youth that you follow, that you see what's taking place in the media world at the moment, it's just a shambles. It's a shambles that if you look at what's taking place on the media world, there's no concrete words. There's no concrete words of something. This can be classified as a scholarly refutation of a person. In the demeanor of their language, of their hand movements, of their words, how they're derogatory towards another person. It's all clearly visible that any sensible person can see that. That they can't acknowledge that someone else could have done something good. That someone else could have achieved something inside their life. So what do they have to do? They have to drag that person down in the pits. They have to find a mistake or a few mistakes, or let's say a few hundred mistakes from thousands of good things that a person may have done inside their life. Thousands of good things they may have done inside their life, but to just home in upon that, to give this depiction, this image that this person is some form of demon that this person may be. And this exists inside our society. Don't become so shallow and think it doesn't exist. Anyone who's intelligent enough will see it clearly visible in the way that people speak, in the way they express themselves. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed something upon another person who's learned the Quran, who's memorized the Quran, who recites the Quran, who's in places a position of an imam inside the masjid, who's being in knowledge of certain things, who's been given a rank in certain things, كل هذا من الله سبحانه وتعالى فضل من الله. It's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Person isn't there to drag another Muslim down, to speak ill of another Muslim, to demonize another Muslim.
When خالفت في بعض الأشياء, you may differ in some things with another Muslim, you still have a demeanor of respect towards another human being. You don't make these blunt statements and blunders that you can watch clearly and see how people are addressing towards other Muslims. And the sad thing is they try to justify it and say, well, there's nothing wrong with that. These are enemies of Islam. These are bad people. There's iqbalun nas. If people are listening to certain things or coming towards certain things, who are we to judge what will happen to people? Who are we to judge who will be forgiven, who will be pardoned? That's why many ulama mention a person could have so many hasanat, could have so many good deeds inside their life, that those discrepancies will wipe them out. Those mistakes that they may have had inside their life, it will be wiped out by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can't play God on this earth. Allah said inside the Quran, فَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ هُوَ أَعْلَمُ بِمَنِ اتَّقَى. Don't claim sanctity for yourself. Don't claim that I'll be forgiven. This person won't be forgiven. This person will be judged like this. This person will be like this. This person will be punished like this. إِنْ عَلَيْكَ إِلَّا الْبَلَاغِ. Upon you to convey the message, to remind the people. وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَضًّا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَنْفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. The Prophet is warned himself. He used harsh and rude to the people around you. They would split away from you. That's not the way of a Muslim towards other Muslims that we find. Because the inner fact is there's an element of jealousy amongst ourselves. Amongst the youth that exist, that certain people, they want to display that jealousy and to bring other Muslims, people around them for no apparent reason. Next we find the jealousy of one's wealth and possessions. أَمْ يَحْسَدُونَ النَّاسَ عَلَى مَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. Why are we jealous regarding someone else's wealth and property and what they own? أَمْ يَحْسَدُونَ النَّاسَ. Are you jealous towards people regarding that which Allah has bestowed upon another individual? These are blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether it be blessings of ilm, of knowledge, of understanding, of wealth, of property, whatever it may be. It's all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And likewise we find the blessings of one's wealth and children that we find and family that we find. What does shaitan want to come and do? الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي صُدُورِ النَّاسِ. Create instability. Instability inside our society. The breaking up of homes and families that we find is taking place inside the society at the moment that we find. And that's in conclusion that we find that ignore the jealous individuals. Because they'll just burn away. And that's why we find the hadith in Sunan Abi Dawud that we find. That indeed, إِنَّ الْحَسَدْ يَأْكُلْ حَسَنَاتْ كَمَا تَأْكُلُ النَّارَ حَطَبْ. Indeed, jealousy burns away the person's good deeds, just like fire burns away at wood. So the person who's enraged in some jealousy, they're just losing their good deeds. They're losing their good deeds. That's why you find the Prophet, as I mentioned, to his companions, he said, أَتَدْرُونَ مَنِ الْمُفْلِسِ. Do you know who the bankrupt individual is? Who's going to be the bankrupt individual there? That's why, as we began with it, we have this external display of Islam. That we do all these actions of Islam, but we don't really focus within ourselves. They said the bankrupt individual, man la dinar wa la dirham lahu. They said, Ya Rasulullah, the person in their judgment, the bankrupt individual is a person that has no dinar wa la dirham, who has no pound or dollar to their name. He said, that's not the muflis. That's not a bankrupt individual in their judgment. The bankrupt individual in their judgment is the one who has mountains of good deeds. Who has mountains of good deeds. But when it's come to make accountability of this individual, وَلَكِنْ شَتَمَ هَذَا وَقَذَفَ هَذَا وَضَرَبَ هَذَا. He cursed this one. He said these rude words to this one. He harmed this one. He slapped this one. He took away this person's right. So what's the barter exchange system on the day of judgment? You know, just side point, if you, may Allah forbid, you miss a salah, you do something wrong inside your life, Wallahu Ghafur Rahim, He can pardon and overlook you. But you take away the right of another Muslim. Don't say to another Muslim, Wallahu Ghafur Rahim. Don't say Allah is merciful. لأن هناك حقوق الله وحقوق العباد. Allah will pardon and overlook so many things of us. But He's not going to overlook when you harm another Muslim and say that, oh Allah forgive me in the day of judgment. Allah is going to say no. This is between you, بينك وبينه, between you and this individual. So what's going to happen? That person I've cursed and I've reviled without any justification, that person's bad deeds are transferred over to me. And my good deeds are transferred over to that person. So I've become a bankrupt individual. I've become a loser. وَإِن صَلَّ وَصَامَ. All my life I pray and I fast and I do all these actions. because I can't control my tongue. I can't control my emotional feelings. I can't control them. I have to lash out at people. I have to say things about people. That's why you should be very, very vigilant of what people write. That you find these keyboard warriors about other Muslims, other people. Do you think you're not going to be asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Don't you think that's ghibah, that's backbiting? Don't you think that's slandering at times? They read some of the comments that some of these youth, what they write, and they think nothing of it. They think nothing of it, that for some reason I'm going to be scot-free. Allah's not going to ask me about this. مَا يَلْفِظُ مِنْ قَوْلٍ إِلَّا لَدَيْهِ رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ. Not a word that we utter except for it's recorded. And the majority of ulama tafsir, God, these are the two angels by our side. كِرَامًا كَاتِبِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ مَا تَفْعَلُونَ. Noble scribes who know what we're doing, who know what we're uttering. That's what sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, to be vigilant about everything that we do. مَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ. Whoever believes in Allah on the last day, speak good or remain silent. Speak good or remain silent. Don't let your jealousy or shaitan come into your heart and your mind to enrage you. That then later in your life you feel sad for the things that you said, the things that you've done inside your life. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all the tawfiq and ability to come close to the sunnah and the teachings of the Prophet. Not just external teachings, but internal teachings inside our life, to resemble his characteristics to the best of our ability, that we begin to meet him inside al-akhirah and drink from that fountain from the blessed hands of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Inna Allah wa malaikatu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma barik ala Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama barakta ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا اغفر لنا لإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم. ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا انصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. قوموا لصلاتكم يرحمكم الله.